This took place about 10 years ago when I was a freshman in college. This is the first time I've recounted this story in full detail to anyone. I attended college in a rural mountain area in the Northeast, a small school tucked away in the rolling hills of the mountains. The type of place where the beauty and casual grace of nature is juxtaposed by the ugliness of humanity. The newspaper was ultra-conservative, and you couldn't go too deeply into the woods beyond a few trees without seeing some trace of meth activity. You know the type of place I mean. Anyway, one of my new friends from college discovered somehow an abandoned train trestle deep in the woods about 5 miles from campus. It was basically in no man's land. I don't remember how he actually found this place because it was very much off the path. The trestle crossed above a river which placidly flowed about 40 feet below. It was actually quite beautiful, and we began going there maybe 3 times a week, just chilling on the trestle, watching the water below and the open sky above. We'd drink 40s there, smoke a bowl there, bring girls there. We began jumping off the trestle into the water below and then climbing back up. It was just a very college-y thing to do. Our chill spot, basically. So one day, just needing to get away from the dorms and away from it all, I decided to go by myself to the trestle for a swim. It was about 7 p.m, so I still had a good hour or so of dim sunlight, and I brought a flashlight for the walk home when it was sure to be dark. I made the trek through the pathways of the woods as I had done 100 times before, left my towel and flashlight on the trestle, and jumped into the water. The water was about 10 to 15 feet deep, I'd say. It flowed almost imperceptibly. You might as well be swimming in a stagnant pool. However, about maybe 50 yards from the trestle, the river narrows and the current picks up significantly. Then about 20 yards after that, there is maybe a 20-foot high waterfall that bubbles and splashes with extreme violence. We used to watch large objects go over and never come up again. So there I am, dimly bobbing my head in and out of the water, doing underwater flips and etc. When I pop my head out of the water, I happen to glance to the side of the river and see a man walking towards the water. The water is kind of impeding my view, so I don't see him fluidly walking towards the water. I more see him in different stages of being closer to the water, like flipping through a flip book. He's 15 feet away, 10 feet away, 5 feet away. I can barely give you a description. Maybe 6 foot tall, pale, skinny, black hair pulled back in a ponytail. What I do remember most about his appearance was the extremely empty look on his face and in his eyes. Like he was doing something mundane, like taking out the trash or raking leaves. I am treading water, not knowing what to think, and I see that he is no longer beside the river. He has dove in, and is swimming pin straight directly at me so fast. I try and swim in the opposite way, but within a minute I feel him grab my ankle and tug. I tried to scream, but water filled my mouth. While I'm underwater, he lets go and goes up for air, then grabs back and pulls me again. It seems like he's done this before, and I never once saw him after he jumped in the water. He's gradually pulling me to where the current picks up before the waterfall. I start to realize this and start fucking flipping out, kicking, screaming, cursing to no effect. Finally, I feel the current start to take me, and as I twist away towards the waterfall, I look back and see this fucking guy just casually swimming back to where he jumped into the water, not even looking at me. This is by far the scariest moment of my life as I approach the waterfall. Long story short, I go over and I am underwater for a long time, over a minute. The water above unrelentingly pushing me under. The only reason I survived was because there was a large log that had gone over, and I grabbed it and leveraged against the bottom to push me from the crushing water. I survived obviously, but then I had to trek the miles back to my dorm in the dark without a flashlight, every step of the way thinking he would come back to finish the job. The next year, a football player drowned going over that fall. The news said it was because there was an extreme current due to recent rainfall. But I've always wondered about that. Before I start, here's a bit of context to my story. My husband and I live in a 2-floor house with 2 main entrances, one along the front and the other on the side of the house, which opens up into the laundry room. When we're too busy or it's too late to walk our dog, we'll hook his collar along the long line that's attached to one of the pipes on the corner of our house so he can use the bathroom. We used to do this from the door in our laundry room, but we noticed the large steep from the door to the ground had been taking a toll on his hips. As a result, we started letting him out through the front door instead, since the porch is much closer to the ground. This particular night, I was home alone with my dog, and it was around midnight when I decided to let him out one last time before going to bed. I hook him up to his line, close the door and lock it before heading into the kitchen to put away the dishes. This was pretty routine. Even if he used the bathroom quickly, he liked to walk around along the front and side of the house for a few minutes before coming back inside. As I'm putting away the dishes, I hear a scratch on the door. This is how my dog signals he wants to come inside, so I head over to let him back in. Since I've watched way too many scary movies, I always look through the door's peephole before actually opening the door. Out of habit, I look to check that my dog is in front of the door. Instead, I see a man staring very intently at the door handle. I freeze with my hand on the door handle. I don't know how much time went by, but when I heard another scratch, this one louder than the last, this kind of wakes me up from my initial shock and I run to grab my cell phone. I call my husband to tell him what's happening. He was very confused and I probably wasn't explaining the situation very well, but says that he's heading home. This is when I realize my dog is still outside with this person. I head back to the front door, trying to make as little noise as possible to check whether the stranger is still there. Just like before, he's standing there, head bowed, looking at the doorknob. I tiptoed over to the laundry room and slowly opened the door as quietly as possible. I can't see my dog anywhere and the side of my house is covered in gravel. I knew I couldn't step outside without making a lot of noise. With my heart still pounding in my chest, I go to the front door to keep an eye on the stranger and to get a better look at him. I considered calling the police, but I didn't feel like they would take me seriously since all this man was doing was standing in front of my house. I tried taking a picture of him with my cell phone, but my camera was only able to take pictures of the peephole and not the images behind the glass. All of a sudden, the man looks up directly at me. I swear he knew I was there. He glares at me, then opens his mouth to show me this taunting, malicious grin. He stood that way there for a few seconds. With that, he turns around and starts to walk down the street. I stay in the same place, almost expecting him to rush back and start pounding on the door. Luckily, my husband got back a few minutes after. Long story short, he convinced me to call the police and we went out looking for our dog. It turns out this man had cut the end of the line connected to the pipe, and our dog decided this was a good time for him to explore our neighbor's backyard, which was where we found him. It's been 3 years since this happened. We've since moved to a new house for unrelated reasons, and the police were never able to come up with any suspects. Ever since then, we now take our dog on very long walks before the sun goes down. This happened in the fall of 1993 when I was 20 years old. In the interest of context, this was before I started college and I was working in a material prep department of a plastic factory on the night shift. I was the only woman in the department and my male co-workers were initially skeptical that I could handle the job, but I proved myself and earned their respect. It was hard work, but on the plus side, it also put me in the best shape of my life. It was also around this time that I had dumped my abusive boyfriend. He was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive, as well as an alcoholic. This fact, more than anything, is probably why I got myself into this situation in the first place. I had just gotten off work and it was about 1:30 a.m. My car was running on fumes, so I stopped at a local gas station to fill up. While I was pumping gas, a woman about my age approached me looking nervous and scared. She said that she had been at her boyfriend's house and they had been in a fight. She'd walked to the gas station to use the payphone and call a friend to pick her up. On her way to the station, a car pulled up and she was walking and the guys inside started catcalling and harassing her. With a slight movement of her head, she indicated a car that was parked off to the side by the gas station dumpsters. I saw a large light green car like a Caddy or a Lincoln with at least 2 or 3 shadowy figures inside. She said they threatened her and she was too scared to call a friend and wait. The woman was neat, well-dressed, and didn't seem high or drunk or anything like that. She just seemed really nervous and freaked out, so I didn't even hesitate. I finished pumping my gas and told her to hop in the car, that I'd take her home. At that time, on a weeknight, there was little traffic, so I booked it right out of the gas station and asked her where she lived. She kept twisting around in the seat to see if the car was behind us, and when I asked her to put her seatbelt on, she ignored me and kept looking for the car. I assumed she was just scared. A few blocks down the road, however, I noticed she was looking around the car and she started asking me about money. Where's your purse? Where's your bag? I need money. You need to give me some money. My stomach sank. I have this woman in my car and now she's gonna rob me. Fuck. But when I thought about it, robbery didn't make much sense. I was driving a 1985 Chevrolet affectionately named Shitbox, and I was wearing my work clothes, a ratty t-shirt with jeans and combat boots. I did not look like a person with a lot of cash, primarily because I wasn't a person with a lot of cash. She twisted around in the seat again and started yelling, "There they are, there they are." She didn't sound scared anymore. I checked the rear view, and sure enough, the light green car was right behind me. She started cackling and bouncing up and down in the seat. "My boys are gonna fuck you up, bitch. They're gonna fuck you up." She's laughing like crazy, opening the glove box, looking in the back for my bag or purse, telling me all the messed up shit these guys are planning to do to me. Now, if I'd been smart, I would have just driven to the police station. Actually, if I'd been very smart, I would have called the cops from the gas station and waited with her until they arrived. That would have been the intelligent thing to do. Unfortunately, none of this crossed my mind until later. In the moment, I just got really fucking angry. I realized three key things all at once. There was an intersection up ahead with cars on either side waiting to cross, and the light had just turned yellow. I had a spare box cutter that I'd kept from work in the driver's side door compartment. The crazy bitch still hadn't put her seatbelt on. I didn't think. I floored it and passed under the yellow light just as it turned red. I glanced back to see if the green car was still behind me, but the cross traffic at the intersection had stopped to move, and they hadn't caught up. The bitch started yelling. I slammed on the brakes and she hit the dash and the windshield with a solid and viciously satisfying crack. When she rebounded to the passenger seat, I had the box cutter in her face and was screaming some serious bat crazy shit. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, "Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of my car before I cut off your face and make you eat it, bitch." The crazy screaming and box cutter combo worked. She grabbed blindly at the handle and popped the door open, and I started shoving and punching her until the bitch tumbled out of the door to the curb. I stomped on the gas, got to the next turn, and squealed around it with the passenger door still open. I made a few more turns because I was afraid that the green car might catch up to me. After a little while, I stopped to close the passenger door, and then I cut across town and got to the highway to get home. I was on the highway for about 5 minutes before the shake started. I pulled off to the shoulder to calm down and get my shit together, and then I drove home. I told my older sister, who I was living with temporarily after the breakup with my ex, everything that happened. She wrapped me in a tight bear hug while simultaneously yelling about how stupid I was for not going to the police. I've never been so glad to be yelled at in my life. To give some background information, this event occurred a little over a year ago, and I still haven't been able to even begin to get over it. I am a 22-year-old, 5'4" female, and at the time I was 21. My family and I had recently moved to a new town that was a fair amount more rural than the town I had previously lived in, and our new house was a large ranch-style house with a basement. I was home from college, and my parents had left for the week to celebrate their wedding anniversary with their friends who lived several hours away. Before I continue, I'll give a quick layout of the house so that you'll be able to imagine the setting a bit more clearly. There were 3 doors which led into the house. One of them was on the front porch, a sliding glass door on the back porch, which did have a lock and a floor-length curtains for privacy, and another door on the other side of the wall from my bedroom, which led into the garage and basement. When you walk out of my bedroom and turn, you can see all the way across the house, kitchen, living room, dining area, to the door of my parents' bedroom and the stairs leading up from the basement. It had been a few days since my parents left and I hadn't had any problems. They had sent me a couple messages on Facebook letting me know that they arrived at their friend's house safely and were having a good time. The day had gone well and I was sure to check that I had locked all the doors of the house once the sun started to go down. It was about 11 p.m. and I was doing my nightly routine of laying in bed and messing around on my computer when I suddenly got this sinking feeling of dread. I felt as if I was being watched. It was summer and we didn't have AC, so I had a large box fan in the window blowing the cool air into my stiffy hot room. But once that feeling settled over me, I decided that I should remove the fan and close the window just in case. Once removing the fan, shutting and locking the window and pulling down the curtains, I felt a bit better. However, I still couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I laid back down in my bed and tried to continue what I was doing, though I didn't put my headphones back on. After a few minutes, I began to hear something that sounded like light scratching. I sat in bed listening to the sound, trying to pinpoint what it was and if I recognized it at all. Our new house, although relatively close in distance to our neighbors, had a fair amount of forest around it, so I thought the scratching may have been an animal or someone's dog that got loose and wanted to come inside. After a few minutes, the scratching stopped and everything returned to silence, so I figured that I was probably right and that must have been an animal. My relief was short-lived, as soon after the scratching stopped, from the other side of the wall, I began to hear slow footsteps descending into the basement. This is when I knew I was completely fucked. There was no way I could get out of the house without walking past the basement stairs. We didn't have a house phone, and at the time, I was in the process of getting a new cell phone because mine was broken beyond repair. I sat there for a few seconds wondering what the hell I should do. I knew that I would need to get out of the house as soon as possible, and that the more time I wasted, the worse it would get for me. I contemplated popping the screen off my bedroom window and jumping out, but it wasn't far enough off the ground that there was a good chance I would end up getting hurt if I did, not to mention that if I jumped out the window and hurt myself, I wouldn't be able to run for help, and I would be right next to the door that whoever was in my house had gone through. So I decided to very carefully and quietly open my door and peek out around the corner, and if the coast was clear, I would make a mad dash for the front door and sprint to my neighbor's house. I very slowly opened my bedroom door, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness of the house before creeping around the corner and looking to see if it was safe to make a run for it. What I saw nearly made me vomit. As my eyes scanned the house, I noticed that something was off. I squinted hard as I looked over at the basement stairs. I was able to make out the shape of a man. What made it worse, he wasn't just standing at the top of the stairs. He was fucking crawling up them like some kind of nightmare creature. I quickly backed into my room again, shutting and locking the door as quietly as I could. I don't think he had seen me, but there was no way that I was going to make a run for it now. My only choice was to pop the screen and jump out the window. As I was unlocking and opening my window, I heard the handle to my bedroom door turn. Once the man realized that it was locked, in a sickeningly sweet sing-song voice, he cooed, "I know you're in there." This was followed by a loud cackle, and what I could only imagine was him throwing himself at full force against my door. I ripped the screen out of the window and flung myself out. I landed wrong on my right foot, and I was sure that I had hurt my ankle, but at this time I couldn't think of anything other than getting as far away as possible. I got up and ran as fast as I could to my neighbor's house, knocking on their door in a panic frenzy and ringing the bell over and over. I looked over at my house as I was yelling for my neighbors to let me in, and I swear to fucking God, I could see the man standing at my window, waving at me. My neighbors finally opened the door after what felt like forever, and I managed to explain well enough what was going on for them to let me in and call the police. I stayed with them until the police arrived. The police searched my house and found that the lock to the basement had been picked, and that the door to my bedroom was hanging off the hinges. They weren't able to find the man anywhere, and because I had only seen him for a split second in the dark, I couldn't provide them with a good description of him. Of course, I got into contact with my parents immediately, and they hurried home. The police took my statement and searched the area for the man, but of course they came up with nothing. After this event, my parents and I were sure to add deadbolt locks to the doors leading into the basement, and to the door leading out of the basement to the rest of the house. They also helped me pay to get a new phone. What really bothers me about all of this is that there was nothing stolen. There wasn't even any evidence that the guy had looked through anything while he'd been in my house.